Welcome to Resilient Minds 365, where we discuss the resilient stories of entrepreneurs, professionals, and students with mental illnesses to encourage you to strive, thrive, and live in abundance. I'm your host, Cleone Crawford. Today we have a special guest with us. His name is Dave Tyler, and he's on Instagram with a blog, I believe, called The Unopened Male. And he's going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about himself and what he does. So tell us, Dave, a bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate you taking the time to put this all together. Yeah, like you said, my name's Dave Tyler. I'm from, as you can tell by the accent, I'm from England, from Brighton specifically, but now living up in England. 28 years old. I work in finance, but really these days I kind of just identify myself through social media as just a guy that suffers with depression and anxiety. I have done for over a decade and a half now. And I talk about my experiences through my blog and my Instagram, Unopened Male, like you said.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you very much. So tell us more. You're in finance. How long have you been in finance?
Well, I've been in finance for forever. Both of my parents are accountants. I have cousins, aunties, uncles that are accountants. As you can imagine, Christmas dinners and family get-togethers aren't the most exciting of chat. Because of that, there's a lot of boring tax talk and what have you. So I've really been in that basically my whole life. I studied at a college. I then went to university for a year, ended up dropping out due to my depression, but still pursued finance. Later, when I was sort of in a slightly better place in my life, I went back to university to carry on studying business and finance. And I've sort of been working in it in a more of a professional capacity post-uni for around 2-3 years now, since I finished my degree.
Okay, cool. And then also you mentioned, I know on your Instagram, how we connected is through your Instagram account, which is Unopened Male. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that and your goal and the purpose for that and your website and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was as somebody that never spoke about my depression. I was basically silent for 15 years. When I eventually came out and decided that I wanted to start talking about things, I wanted to be an advocate for it. I was silent for so long, and thinking about how long I was silent for made me think about how many other people must be out there silent as well. So I thought, if I'm going to start talking about this, I want to be doing it in the best way possible, be an advocate, be someone that's at the forefront of it. So I created my page as basically a way of sort of saying to my close friends and family that didn't know beforehand that I have depression. I'm still the same guy that you know, but I suffered with depression for a long time. These are the things that I've experienced, and it's a way of me sharing my story. And hopefully from that we'll beget other people to share their stories. It's been a great experience having people reach out and tell me about some of the things that they've gone through, friends that I might not have ever known have struggled, or just strangers that wanted to reach out because they don't feel like they have anybody in their life that they can speak to. And when you talk about the plans for the future, it's really just more of the same. I really want to carry on sharing my stories and hopefully have people share with me, so that can sort of end the stigma a little bit around men's mental health, where typically men are a lot more silent. We're told to man up and sort of take things on the chin. In today's society, that's not how things should be anymore. And I want to be someone that puts the right messages out there. And hopefully, if one person comes forward, hopefully that leads to more people to come forward. And slowly we just get into a better society, especially around mental health.
That's wonderful. So from what I understand, you mentioned that you suffered from depression. So when were you diagnosed?
Well, officially, I was only diagnosed relatively recently, probably in the last 18 months to 2 years, when I finally went to therapy for the first time. But when I was speaking to my GP here in the UK, I was describing sort of all the feelings that I was going through that made me think that I had depression. And they sort of described it as a very clear-cut case of clinical depression. But when I was describing them to my GP, I was saying, look, these are things I've been going through for over a decade now. So I guess officially diagnosed as only a few years, but knowing myself and knowing how I've been for that period of time, I'd say I've had it for well over 15 years at this point.
Okay, wow. So, like, tell us, what is your mental health story of resilience? What have you gone through, and how did you overcome? How did you get to the place where you are right now?
Well, when I didn't really understand what I was going through, I didn't have much education around mental health growing up. I'd imagine that a lot of your listeners are probably quite similar. The education around mental health isn't really there, or wasn't when I was growing up. So I didn't really know what I was going through as I was going through it. And I think that's probably quite common for a lot of people. So and when you don't know a lot about mental health, you don't know ways to combat it and to try and beat depression and to try and pull yourself out of depressive episodes or so. So at times when I was depressed, I would basically shut off to the world. I would, fake illnesses to skip school. I would be taking time off work. I would be taking weeks off of university, things like that, simply because I was going through an episode and physically couldn't find the motivation to do anything. Part of my depression is very much sort of a self-deprecating, self-hatred, and when you don't feel much compassion for yourself, it's very difficult to motivate yourself for the future, because you think, why should I care about? Why should I make plans for a future that I don't care about? So I spent the longest time where that was my mentality. I spent, like I said, weeks, even months, sort of not leaving the house. Even I wouldn't look after myself. I wouldn't be just doing simple tasks, simple everyday tasks that you do. Like I wouldn't be getting up and showering. I wouldn't be getting exercise. I wouldn't be eating well. And throughout the period that I've been having it, I've lost jobs through calling in sick too much. I dropped out of university because I was going through a depressive episode and couldn't handle it. I've lost girlfriends and friends because of it, because I would shut them out because I didn't know how to deal with what I was going through, and I didn't want to show the world that I was going through depression. So in many ways, on sort of a very smaller scale, I've lost just about everything over the years. Thankfully, in the past year or so, I've been able to turn a lot of that around. My girlfriend has suffered with anxiety for a long time, and she's very open about her struggles, and she talks to friends who share their experiences, and in consequence, they support each other and they help each other get through it. Mm-hmm. So you see that you see someone that you're so close to doing that, and you see it working, and you're like, wow, why would I not do this? Like, you see the positive results of what communicating and being open and having conversations about mental health can do for you. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't look at my approach to things of just shutting the world off, look at her approach to things of being very open, and then think that my approach was the right way of going about it. Like, it's absolutely not. There's no way that what I was doing was sustainable. How I sustained it for as long as I did without having a, even more of a breakdown, I don't know. But it is a case of, once I started having those conversations, things started getting infinitely better. I now have a support system of friends and family and things like that are able to help me and bring me up through times of darkness and things like that. So the resilience really comes from being able to persevere through the darkest times, mm-hmm. and come out of it the other side and be able to turn that story of depression and darkness into something positive, which is what I'm trying to do at the moment with my page and just having more honest and open communications with people.
Okay, cool. So specifically, what did you have to do to overcome or bounce back from your low points? And you can list all the resources. I know you mentioned therapy as one of them, that you've been doing over the last little while. So if you can list some of those resources that helped you to bounce back, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we'll start off with therapy just because you mentioned it. I only went through therapy for around 3 or 4 months or so. I went through it as a way of just familiarizing myself with starting to talk about things. I never spoke about things, so having these conversations was completely alien to me. I might as well have been speaking another language when I first started talking about it because I had no idea what it is that I was going to say when I opened my mouth and started talking about this. And when people asked me questions about it, I would have no idea how to respond because I'd never taken the time to look after myself and so on. But therapy was an amazing outlet into helping me start having those conversations. I didn't carry it on because for me, I felt like once I had passed that mental barrier of thinking that talking about things was bad, I don't think I needed therapy as a way to resolve things for myself. I found that I was getting the same from just talking to friends and family, or more specifically, just writing on my Instagram and writing sort of very long form pieces about different things that I had experienced over the years or different things that I'm experiencing from a day-to-day basis. So that's definitely a resource that helped me in my first steps. But back when I was younger and I didn't really know what I was doing, and to be fair, I still do this now. I constantly make to-do lists and set myself plans and goals because in doing so, when you're at your lowest, you feel like you can't achieve anything, that you
Right.
have no purpose in this world. You don't feel as if you have a place anywhere, and you feel like there's no point in continuing anything. So what
Exactly.
I did is set myself these to-do lists, and I would write the stupidest tasks on there. It would be a case of like, get up and shower, or leave the house for 5 minutes, or just make sure you're out of bed all day. It would be just really basic things like that that a normal average person, yeah, I probably shouldn't say normal average, but just, most people would just do on a regular basis without even considering it. It is just a part of, quote unquote, normal life. So I wanted to force myself to get back into normality. And that helped me get through my lowest points, that small sense of achievement that you get from completing the tiniest task of, not ordering a takeaway or doing 10 minutes of exercise. Like those little things, they build up and they snowball and they make you feel better about yourself. And then the next day you can take some of those endorphins from the day before and that sense of accomplishment from the day before, and it slowly gets you out of what can be a very deep hole.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And the next question I have are, so what are 3 things that you wish you had available when you were at your lowest points?
Well, I touched on it before at the start, where I think knowledge, resources, education about mental health would have been immensely important. If I'd have known that what I was going through was something that a number of people have dealt with, and it's things that people have studied and found ways of recovering from and getting better from, that would have been hugely helpful for me. I know that if I'd have been able to read stories of people's experiences, or been able to read the NHS National Health Service website to see that, okay, this is things that people with depression go through. These are things that you might be experiencing at the moment. Knowing that those resources were there for me and I had some things to turn to and to advice to turn to would have been immensely important. Secondly, just a support system of understanding and non-judgmental friends. When I was a lot younger, I used to be very communicative and very open. I was quite a sensitive child. I was always chatting. As a toddler, my mum used to describe me as one of those people that I would just go up to anyone on public transport and just start having a conversation with them. That was the kind of person I was. And then I went completely the other way, because when I started speaking to people, they would be judgmental of the things that I said that I was experiencing, or they would use the knowledge that I was, going through a tough time or being sad. They would use that against me as a form of bullying at school and things like that. So if I'd have had a good support system of friends and family when I was younger, that would have been immensely important for me. But thankfully I have it now. So, it's always better late than never. And because I have it now, it's what I want for everyone else. And finally, just having somebody that had gone through similar experiences to me in my life would have really helped me. Times were different when I was, like 13, 14, 15. Social media wasn't really that big of a thing. And it definitely wasn't in the same forms where it is now, because now I can just decide one day that I'm going to start a page about mental health and depression, and people will reach out to me saying, hey, I'm dealing with this as well, or I'm sorry you're dealing with that. How can I help you? You'll find a community of supportive people. When I was younger, that didn't exist. So social media wasn't in that stage. So it wasn't easy for me to find somebody who would sort of admit that they were going through some things that I would, because you only know the people that you can see, really. And people weren't very open back then, especially men. So I didn't know of anybody that was going through something similar. So I couldn't, share stories or bounce ideas off of anyone, because I just didn't have that person there for me. Thankfully now, with social media, for all its pitfalls, you can join a community like the one that we find ourselves a part of in the mental health scene, where people are great. People are very open, very supportive. They're very non-judgmental. And I wish I had that when I was younger. And I, as much as I don't want my kids in the future to really be on social media too much, because I don't think it's great for a lot of senses.
That's so true.
At least there is this community out there that I know is a positive community. So, I would never want them to go through any mental health struggles, but if they did, I would be glad to know that there is a great community out there for them.
Okay, great. So wrapping up, one of our questions is, what words of hope can you give to our listeners?
Just look at me. Like I've said, I went 15 years without saying a single word. I went from massive lows where I thought there was no way I was going to be making it through the week. Suicidal thoughts were a real common occurrence in my life for years and years. And, my mental and physical health took an absolute beating for a decade and a half. But here I am. I'm standing tall, and I now wear my depression as a badge of honor. And it is something that I can say, look, this is what I'm going through, but this doesn't define who I am. And those struggles have made me resilient. They've made me a better, more understanding person, because I've spoken to other people who are going through similar things, and it makes you more understanding as a person. It really can help you once you start being more open and honest about things. So if somebody's listening to this that hasn't started talking about what they're going through, there's no better time than the present. Just start talking, and you will feel so much better for it, and you will get on the road to recovery a lot quicker because of it.
Amazing. Thank you so very much. So now we're going to switch to a favorite part of the episode that I like, which is about music therapy. As you see behind me, there's a book. It's called The Music of My Life, which is a book that is about my personal journey with bipolar and music therapy, and how it helped me through, to help stabilize me and so forth. So What type of music do you like first?
I am a sucker for sort of hip hop and rap. I always find that when we have friends over, I always get a playlist up of like 90s and 2000s, like old school, like R&B and hip hop and things like that. I've always just been a sucker for it, like a big melody jammer. It takes me away.
Okay, all right. So if you were to think of a song that best describes your journey, what would it be and why?
The one that came to mind is actually quite a recent song. It's from a rapper called Logic's retirement album, his most recent album. And it's a song called Amen. And basically on that track, it's a description of, at least the way I relate to it, is it talks about his life in a sense of how he really had a difficult life growing up, and there were dark days around every corner. You know, people made him question if he wanted to live and things like that. But that's the sort of first part of the song, the first verse and so on. But as the song goes on, it goes into talking about how he's much happier in his life. He's sort of wants to celebrate the transformation that he's gone through and being able to get through his battles with mental health and depression and suicidal thoughts. And he wants to celebrate those with the people that have been there with him throughout it, the people that have been there with him in the trenches. And although I'm not at that later stage just yet, I'm still in the early stages of really getting through this and getting on a road to recovery. It massively gives me hope for the future. And hearing him talk about wanting to celebrate now, finally experiencing happiness and joy for the first time with the people closest to him, that's something that I'm strive for, and I'm going to cling to those sorts of thoughts and ideas going forward. So I can't wait for that day to come. And music like his, where he's very open about, struggling with depression and coming out on the other side, is going to be hugely important for me. And I'll always listen to it on repeat.
Wow, amazing, amazing. So, Dave, how can we stay in touch with you? What are your social media handles?
You can find me at Unopened Male on basically all social medias. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and my website, unopenedmale.co.uk, is just in its early stages of being up and running, where I'm going to start posting a lot more blogs and long form pieces, because I think on Instagram, people's attention spans are a little bit shorter. So I don't want to be writing hundreds and hundreds of words, dissertation just to get potentially not read by that many people. So I'm going to start transferring that onto there. And then my Instagram and other social medias are just going to be, for snippets and of what I'm going through and so on. And that's where you can find me. And if anyone listening is struggling and does want someone to talk to that's going to be non-judgmental, please feel free to reach out. I'm not a mental health trained professional in any sense. I'm just an average guy that has struggled. But if you don't have people in your life, or you want another person in your life to talk to, please reach out. I'd be more than happy to have the conversation.
Amazing. Thank you so very much. So I'd like to thank you very much for sharing your story, Dave. Here at Resilient Minds 365. Listeners, I hope you guys were inspired. You never know where life will take you, and your journey, it's definitely important for you to share your journey, because there are other people who need it. So with that said, and to all you resilient minds out there, until next time, please subscribe to us on all platforms, and don't forget to rate the show and leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Also, join the community of Resilient Minds and sign up for our monthly newsletter at www.cleonecrawford.com. Be sure to grab a copy of my book, The Music of My Life, and 30+1 Resilience Stories on Amazon, all Amazon marketplaces, to get to know me a little bit better. If you can think of one person that will receive value from today's show or connect with Dave's testimonial, please share it with them. Feel free to take a screenshot of this week's episode of the podcast and tag us on Instagram. You can tag myself at Only Cleone or Resilient Minds 365, and today's guest at Unopened Male. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Bingo.
Perfect. And remember, mental health is not a death sentence. Despite your illness, you can strive, you can thrive, and you can live a life of abundance. Until next time, I'm Cleone Crawford, and I'm signing off.